Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Roller Coaster. I'm Alice Kuder with Berkshire Hathaway Real Estate. I'm working out of Seattle, and with me is...
I'm Evie Knoke. I'm a senior loan officer for Guild Mortgage, also out of Seattle, the greater Seattle area.
So today we're going to talk to you a little bit about the phenomenon of redlining. Given that we're in a time and a place where there is a lot of attention given to systemic racism, it is certainly one of the terrible historical facts of real estate and lending in our history, in everyone's history, unfortunately. And we're not going to talk too much specifics right now, but a little bit about what is it and how do you recognize it and what do you do if you think you are being subjected to that. So redlining in general was, again, I should probably know my history a little better than I do, but back when the banks were trying to figure out what are safe loans and what are not, and there was all kinds of assumptions about how race and income work together, and assumptions that if racial minorities were mixed in together in neighborhoods, then the value of the property would go down, and that made for riskier loans. So the banking industry tried to find a way to steer people into and out of neighborhoods, and neighborhoods where racial minorities were allowed to reside and to buy were seen as riskier loans. And so there were these literally maps created that showed these red zones where you don't make loans in these areas, and you do make loans in those areas. And it created pockets of wealth and all over the city, the county, the country. Evie, this is really your area more than mine. So let me know if you need to contradict anything I just said or add to it.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, Alice. And so nowadays, I would say that if you are working with a loan officer and you're feeling like maybe they're telling you you can't, maybe they're pre-approving you for a home that you feel like that is less than what you can really afford. That might be steering you into a certain away from certain neighborhoods. I mean, I know it definitely still exists, and a lot more with advertising and not advertising. You know, the way that the advertisers are putting now redlining is more so like a company can be accused of redlining if they are advertising in one area certain rates and programs, but not maybe advertising them in another area. Let's say geographically around a certain bank, or they're only advertising on like you cannot say nowadays, you can get this really low rate for this area, or and because it has to be very fair across the board. So I know it's still definitely has happened, but I know it's happening lesser to degree because there's so many laws in place. But that would be if you're just feeling, and or even if a loan officer makes a comment that well, that's a really expensive neighborhood, they are not allowed to say stuff like that. You cannot say, I cannot say that to a client that oh yeah, but it's really expensive there, or the taxes, it's just really my job is really just to help pre-approve people, get them into the loan, and show them choices as well, so that I'm not steering them into one loan product versus another. Yeah.
I think that choices is a big, that's a word that's real important here, because whether it's the agent trying to steer them away from one area to another and limit their choices, or a lender trying to limit their choices on loan programs, that would be a red flag, or should be a red flag to anyone who is afraid that this could be happening to them.
Right.
I think the day and age now where most homeowners are looking for their own homes online anyway, probably more limits the damage that agents could do. Um, I also suspect, I think we've known for the last few years at least that there is a lot more prejudice, if you want to use that old word, bias, going on an individual level that used to not be acceptable to say or believe or admit. And what's been sad to me is to see that that's not, that those restrictions, people don't restrict themselves that much anymore. I guess part of what I'm saying is, I think individuals make up as much of this as, I don't know if the banking industry and the real estate industry, because I haven't come across, for instance, a real estate brokerage that I thought would promote something like this. I think on an individual level, either people um, would feel comfortable with this or wouldn't. And if they would feel comfortable trying to encourage redlining, then they're probably not going to be upfront about it. And so the consumer is going to have to just be paying attention to clues. You
Yeah.
know, when I say, when you tell me as a client, gee, we want to look at these houses over here, and I go, oh, gosh, I don't think you're gonna like that. To me, I have no business saying something like that. And if an agent did say that to a client of mine, I would suspect that there's something going on there. I imagine it would be, how would that come across, do you think, as a loan officer? And do you think there are really lending institutions who are training their people that way, or would that be individual loan officers?
Well, it just so happens, that every year we have our annual license, 8 hours of our continuing education, and a big portion of that is always about ethics too. So um, it's I feel like the number one thing that consumers need to be aware of is that one-on-one. It might not be the organization itself. I mean, the company itself, the bank, the lending company, but it could just be that feeling of what you're getting from that loan officer. So, like you said, saying any feeling of where someone feels like they're sort of being held down to sort of not be able to qualify for what they feel like when they ask, but aren't my debt don't my debt to income ratios work for this purchase price then, and in this neighborhood, then if it does, it does. So there's also the disparate treatment as well, which is not so getting away from redlining, but it's just also a little bit of discrimination. If you're feeling that, let's say you walk into a bank and you're waiting there and you're not getting treated the same way from the front desk person even as you would somebody else. Let's say you're a woman, and yet a man comes in after you, and they pay attention to the man and take them first instead of you. Even those little things they're not allowed, in our ethics training that teaches us that we really have to treat every individual the same. That disparate treatment might not be something that someone is doing, that loan officer is doing on purpose, but for whatever reason, they are somehow being more jovial and friendly, and yeah, we're going to get you the best rate to this person, but maybe a different person of color, they're not saying those things.
Mhm.
And so it really honestly also is how we're treating people. So, we're so happy and excited to help this one, and we'll get to the low rate, but yet we're not saying that to somebody else. That's not right. We should be saying, I'm going to get you the best rate. I'm so excited to work with you, no matter what they look like or who they are. And so that disparate treatment is also something that somebody should look for. And if you're not getting a good feeling from your loan officer or your real estate agent, then that's when you need to, you could file a complaint, or address that with them. Maybe even go to their compliance department,
Mm,
um, directly as well. And that might even be a good place to start too.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think the feeling is true. If they feel that, then it's real, and then it needs to be addressed. Whether or not, and I know there's got to be, all I'm going to get accused of being overly sensitive or whatever. But the fact is, if you feel it, then it's real. And even if, like say, it could be that maybe it's not on purpose, but if it's brought to the attention of the person who's doing it, then they
Mhm.
can learn something from it anyway and realize that their own behavior is causing discomfort.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
you
something
know,
that
so I'd rather have somebody complain or tell me something's wrong and be able to have some discussion about it and find out about it than, um, no, 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 you're imagining it. I don't do that. Anyone who's going to be that defensive, then I think there is something to be addressed there.
Mhm.
Um, and the other thing you brought up that I think I'm glad you mentioned was the ethics training part of it. One of the things, there's often confusion about terms like a real estate agent versus a broker. And those are both they're the same thing. However, most people are more comfortable and familiar with the term real estate agent, so I tend to use that a lot. Broker, sometimes they think that's the person in charge or the boss of the office or something.
Right.
And the Department of Licensing in Washington State decided years ago that for whatever reason, we are officially brokers. Real estate agents are officially brokers, no matter what. If we're licensed for real estate, that's our official term as a broker.
Mhm.
And even there's a managing broker's license that we can get. Still doesn't mean we're managing an office necessarily. It means we are qualified to do that, but it doesn't mean we are. So all of that causes a little bit of confusion. But in addition to that, the other thing I think I wish was better known is the difference between a realtor and a real estate agent. Because a real estate agent is licensed by the state of Washington, but they do not need to be a realtor. Realtor is a trademarked term by the National Association of Realtors to be, and so you'll see at the end of that word, when usually there should be that R in the circle, the registered trademark there, and to be able to legally call yourself a realtor, you have to belong to the National Association of Realtors, which means that the major difference between that is that you subscribe to their code of ethics, which is very stringent. And not if you're not a member of the association, you are not officially ascribed to that. You might live by the same standards, but you might not, and you can't attest to that to a client. So I really like to, and I am obviously a realtor, a member of the National Association for that very reason. And because they do some great lobbying as well for both the public and realtors. So what I'm saying is when you're out there looking for an agent, do pay attention to whether or not they are a realtor. Because hopefully the code of ethics that realtors live up to will also help eliminate some of the possibility of you being a victim of redlining or blockbusting or any other discriminatory practices. Is there any sort of equivalent to that, Evie, with loan officers?
I say we don't really have that, but all loan officers are licensed on the NMLS, which is the national. I should know this actually. It stands for multi state licensing system, and
Yeah.
so you can find out about people as well and make sure that they are licensed. But everyone has to be licensed now. It's very, prior to 2007, 2008, really, you only needed a, number two pencil and a fax machine was the joke about this industry. It's really what's that. So now you're licensed and fingerprinted and criminal background check and all of those things that should have been done before are now, you have to do them. And anywhere you can only be in one place, and every move, if you move from one company to another company, it's very regulated and how your license is transferred, all of those things. So much different nowadays. I mean, it really is a lot safer for the consumer in so many different ways. But again, I think it comes down to if you're feeling like you've been or being treated not fairly, there's some disparate treatment there, whether it's very small or not. Trust your gut, and say, I'm sorry, I have to work with someone else now, and let the loan officer or real estate agent know, because quite frankly, in our industry, we're not going to get better if these things aren't addressed to us, and that's how not everybody has that inherently in them, that, like you said, they might think that they weren't treating anybody different, but if you're making, it's, what is it? Reality is perception, or perception, it's
Yes.
perception's reality, right? So if someone perceives that they are, then that's something that that loan officer needs to work on. And so don't be afraid to say something. I know we have some sources that we, are putting in the chat of where to go to, but I think really just letting that individual know, and maybe reaching out to their management to advise that maybe someone in compliance, have a chat with them about how they're acting.
There are certainly enough of us to choose from.
Yeah.
Washington State alone has over 26,000 real estate agents. I don't know how many loan officers are, but I'm sure it's several thousand. Yeah, so if you don't like the one you're dealing with, go and find someone else. Yeah, and as Evie mentioned, I put in the chat notes the name of the Consumer Protection Finance Committee, Commission.
Bureau.
And if I do it properly,
industry.
Thank you.
Prior to that, the industry was regulated by HUD, but HUD didn't really have a lot of authority to actually go after cases for of fraud or different RESPA violations with different rule violations. So they always had to be joined with the Department of Justice to do something. But all of that power is now, and has been since 2010, with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is actually, what is it? Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So,
okay. So here on the screen, hopefully, if I've done this right, you can see information about how to get a hold of them. The website has a place to click to hit submit a complaint, and also contact information. So I think that's as much probably as we're going to cover today. We hope you enjoyed this and would be really happy to talk to you if we can be of any help, or if you have any feedback.
Happy to be a resource.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks.
All right. Bye, everyone.